We all know that brushing and flossing give us a great smile. But have you ever considered if your toothbrush holds the key to your mental health and potentially shapes your risk of dementia in later life? Today, we're going to explore this by diving into a fascinating 2025 systematic review by Chapla and colleagues, published in the top ranked dentistry journal. And what's really compelling about this review is the screening process. The researchers sifted through thousands of papers to find the absolute highest quality data, eventually narrowing it down to 9 core, rigorous studies. Now, here's the catch: they're all focused on one common goal: investigating the potential connection between oral hygiene and the risk of dementia in older adults. So, there are two things to understand: dementia and oral health. First, let's start with dementia, particularly Alzheimer's disease in later life. It is one of the biggest health challenges of our time. It has a real impact on memories, independence, a sense of self, and can place a lot of strain on some families. The trouble is, our current treatments can slow some symptoms, but they cannot completely reverse them, and we still don't fully understand what kicks the illness off. That's why scientists are looking beyond the brain and asking whether other parts of the body, like our guts, our immune systems, and even our mouths, might be quietly involved. Next is oral health. More specifically, the oral microbiota. This is where you'll see how the mouth is potentially connected to the brain. The story starts with oral microbiota, which includes the whole community of bacteria, fungi, and other tiny organisms living on your teeth, gums, and tongue. In a healthy mouth, good microbes outnumber the bad, and everything stays in balance. This is what's called microbial balance. But when this balance tips into a state called dysbiosis, gum disease causing bacteria can take over. At its worst, these bad bacteria don't always stay in the mouth. What happens is, these bad bacteria can actually leak into your bloodstream and send your whole immune system into overdrive via system-wide inflammation. From there, they might even sneak right past your brain's protective wall and start causing real damage. And once inside, the bad bacteria may stir up inflammation and contribute to the harmful protein buildup linked to Alzheimer's. Now, this is the biological hypothesis Chapel and colleagues set out to test: that this unhealthy oral microbiome may not just be a byproduct of cognitive decline, but that they may also very well be the one contributing to it. To do this, the researchers carried out a systematic review, which is a structured way of pulling together every relevant study and weighing up the evidence as a whole. They followed an internationally recognized method called PRISMA and registered their plan in advance on a public database called Prospero, so that others could see exactly what they were setting out to do before they actually did it. They searched 5 major scientific databases called PubMed, Scopus, Web of Science, Embase, and the Cochrane Library, using carefully chosen search terms about oral bacteria and dementia. 2 researchers independently screened thousands of studies, and a third stepped in whenever they disagreed. In the end, they only kept studies that did a direct comparison between healthy adults over 50 and those experiencing dementia or mild cognitive decline. Plus, to be included, the research had to use reliable, tried and true lab techniques like genetic sequencing. Out of more than 6,000 studies they looked at, they ended up with just 9. To make sure they could really rely on that data, they checked each study for bias and then did what's called a sensitivity analysis. Basically, they took out the weaker studies and ran the numbers again to make sure their results were rock solid. So, what did they find? By looking at the big picture across these studies, Chapel and colleagues identified 5 key findings regarding the relationship between our oral microbes and cognitive decline. First, they found a less diverse microbial ecosystem. Individuals with Alzheimer's disease and mild cognitive impairment showed lower diversity and richness of oral bacteria compared to cognitively healthy individuals. Imagine a vibrant rainforest suddenly losing many of its species. As cognitive impairment advances, the mouth's richness continues to decrease, becoming a natural environment that is less able to cope with change or recover from problems. Second, as this diversity drops, the bad guys take over. There is a consistent increase in harmful gum disease causing bacteria in patients with cognitive decline. Troublemakers like Porphyromonas and certain fungal overgrowths from Candida species were found in much higher numbers. Third, the good guys seem to retreat at the same time. The helpful bacteria begin disappearing, and people with cognitive impairment show a reduction in health associated beneficial bacteria, such as Neisseria and Rothia. Normally, these good microbes act like your body's defenders. They work hard to keep you healthy and fight off pathogens that can make you fall sick. Fourth, adding to this, the review picked up on an interesting genetic twist: the presence of the APOE4 gene variant, which is a known risk factor for Alzheimer's, appears to act as a modifier. A modifier enhances a person's vulnerability to the harmful effects associated with specific oral bacteria, like Porphyromonas and Prevotella intermedia, making the link between mouth bacteria and cognitive decline even stronger. This also suggests the relationship may not be the same for everyone. To save the best for the last, Chapel-Gill and colleagues found a promising signal. In a single clinical trial, targeted oral health interventions demonstrated the potential to restore this microbial balance. Over a 6-month period, treating oral health was actually shown to slow cognitive decline in patients with mild Alzheimer's disease, hinting that this pathway might be modifiable. Ultimately, the overarching conclusion drawn from these findings is that this damaged microbial balance may not merely be a side effect of cognitive decline. Instead, it likely plays an active contributing role in the disease's progression. However, because different studies sometimes disagree on the exact details, we must remember that this is just one piece of a very complex puzzle. You might be thinking, why does this matter? Well, for a long time, dementia has been framed as something that happens inside the brain in isolation. However, Chapel-Gill and colleagues' findings fit into a growing body of work, suggesting the brain is in constant conversation with the rest of the body, and that gum health might quietly be one of the levers we can pull. Not as a cure or a guarantee, but as a piece of the puzzle that is largely within our control, unlike our genes. Imagine your brain is a fortress, and chronic inflammation from bad gums is constantly attacking the gates. Chapel-Gill and colleagues found that oral health interventions could actually help. Remember the 6-month clinical trial we just touched on? This suggests something new: that treating oral health improved the bacterial balance and slowed cognitive decline in patients with mild Alzheimer's. So, the crucial takeaway here is that your mouth might not be as separate from your brain as you think. Now, what can we take from this practically? Looking after your mouth is looking after your whole body. That means brushing twice a day, flossing, and not skipping dental checkups, especially as we age, when gum disease becomes more common. None of this is a treatment for dementia, and we shouldn't overpromise, but small, consistent oral care habits sit at the easy and low-cost end of brain-healthy living. Of course, no single review is the final word. We have to be clear about the limitations. First, 8 of the 9 studies were observational, meaning they captured a snapshot of who has what bacteria and who has cognitive impairment at one point in time. Because of this, Chapel-Gill and colleagues can't tell us which came first. It's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. We don't know for sure if the bad mouth bacteria contribute to dementia, or if having dementia makes it harder for people to care for their teeth, allowing harmful bacteria to build up. The reality is likely a nuanced combination of both, and untangling them will need long-term studies. Second, the included studies were small, and most used a sequencing technique called 16S rRNA, which can struggle to identify bacteria right down to the species level. So future research will need bigger, more diverse cohorts and more controlled trials to confirm what these early signals point to and understand exactly how these bacteria operate. Let's wrap up. Chapel-Gill and colleagues have shown that the connection between oral health and brain health is no longer a niche idea. Specific gum disease-related bacteria show up more often in people with Alzheimer's and mild cognitive impairment. Helpful protective bacteria show up less, and the mouth's microbial diversity shrinks as cognition declines. We can't yet say that fixing the mouth will protect the brain, but the evidence so far suggests that oral health may represent a modifiable pathway for influencing dementia risk in later life. By keeping the good bacteria happy and the bad bacteria at bay, the simple everyday act of caring for your teeth might be one of the easiest ways to care for your future mind.